Hey guys, today I'm going to do part 2 of my Pentagram of Venus and Golden Ratio videos. I'm going to show you more Venus and Phi or Golden Ratio encoding with the Pentagram of Venus and the star shape of the pentagram. If you haven't seen part 1, you should go back and watch that. You'll have a better understanding of what I'm showing here. And I got a lot of thumbs up, a great response from part 1, so I really appreciate that. But in part 2 here, we're going to continue on showing you the symbolism of Venus. And the symbol of Venus is actually represented by the rose. And the origin of this rose shape is the Venus-Earth pentagram. The 13:8 Venus to Earth orbital ratio from the perspective of Earth forms this pentagram, and the orbital paths form this rose. And then the 414, that is the average visual magnitude of Venus. We're talking about this number again as well. But the star shape, the pentagram, also encodes other things as well. I'm going to show you how the pentagram is related to the six-pointed star, the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David. There's an alchemical relationship between these two stars. And if we look at the pentagram here, the upright or point up pentagram, that represents the ascent into the spiritual realm, while the inverted pentagram, that represents the descent into the physical realm. So the 10-pointed star, that represents combined heaven and earth, combined physical and spiritual realms. But if we look over here at the Star of David here, we have two combined triangles. And those triangles are fire and water, the alchemical elements fire and water combined. And when you combine these two elements, you automatically encode the air and earth symbols as well. So you have the four elements encoded into the Star of David. And if we look at the alchemical flowchart here, from chaos to order, and I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, order out of chaos. But this would be the alchemical representation. From chaos to order, we have the male and female separated. Then we have the tria prima, or the three elements of alchemy, mercury, sulfur, and salt. Then we have the fire, air, water, and earth. And that combines back into the Star of David, or the four elements here. And to encode the fifth element, the pentagram encodes the fifth element. And here, this is the Chinese wuxing. And we have the fifth element here represented as wood. In classical alchemy, that would be represented by the ether. And wood or ether, this is the first phase of the elements, which the other elements are derived. And wood or the ether, that's represented by the planet Jupiter, or the wood star. The season that it represents is spring, which is renewal. The cardinal direction is east, and of course the sun rises in the east. And the color it is associated with is blue. It can also be associated with green. But this is the wuxing version of the alchemical cycle. And the reason I'm showing you the Chinese version here is that we're in the Chinese year of the pig. And I want to show you some interesting gematria with some elements here. I'm going to spell out three elements here. We're in the year of the pig. So I have bacon written up here, but I'm going to finish this out here with the elements that they represent: barium, cobalt, and nitrogen. And you can see that sums to 219. And I'm going to be showing you guys this 219 as well as we go along here. 219 is very important because the 219th prime is 1367, but the 219th verse of Revelation is Revelation 13:8, and this is our Venus to Earth orbital ratio. And this particular verse of Revelation, I'm going to show you some more encoding of this 13:8 ratio of Venus and Earth and how it's related to the 219, because it's the 219th verse. So I showed you guys in part 1 that the pentagram of Venus, the star points, are formed by Venus and Sun inferior conjunctions. When Venus and the Sun are lined up, that's one of our star points. And there's a number relationship here between Venus and the Sun. If we look at the average surface temperature given for Venus, it's 864 degrees Fahrenheit, and the diameter of the Sun is given as 864,000 miles. Venus here, average surface temperature, 864 degrees. And the diameter of the Sun is given as 864,000 miles. And this is a very important number, this 864, because time is based on a solar day. There are 1,440 minutes in a day. So that's 86,400 seconds. So they have this 864 in the Venus and Sun encoding time for our solar day. And if we go back and look here at Venus, Venus would be the Roman goddess. So the Greek equivalent to Venus would be Aphrodite. And then the Hebrew equivalent would be the Lilith. And I showed you guys this before, but we're currently in the 31st pentagram, Venus pentagram, since the founding of the United States. And the 31st Venus pentagram started on March 25th, 2017. And I showed you here that the L, or deity, in the Hebrew Gematria sums to 31. And this starting point, or this date of the beginning of the 31st pentagram, it's a very important date. I'll show you some encoding with that date. So the 31st pentagram began on 3/25/2017. I'm going to go back here and put in Venus. Venus sums to 81 in the English ordinal system here, English ordinal cipher. So if we go 81 days after the beginning of the 31st pentagram, that gets us to June 14th, 2017, and that is Trump's birthday. And what's interesting about that is that June 14th would be 4/14 on the Roman calendar, and Venus, of course, is the Roman goddess. So we have our 4/14. for a visual magnitude of Venus there, encoded into the 81st day, or 81 days after the pentagram here. So I want to show you guys we're going to go to this date here, 8/8/2017. This is 4 months and 14 days after the beginning of the Venus pentagram. And 8/8/2017, that was the day that Trump threatened North Korea with fire and fury. Now we're going to go to this date, 1/5/2018. This is 9 months and 11 days after the 31st pentagram. And I'll show you just how significant this 9/11 is to the golden ratio here and Revelation here shortly. But 9 months and 11 days into the pentagram, we had the release of the book, Fire and Fury. So you can see here they're definitely using this star point as a beginning point for many of the rituals here, especially in the Donald Trump presidency here. So we have Venus and Aphrodite and Lilith as our female representation of the goddess here. So in the Hindu character would be Kali. And Kali, of course, is the goddess of time, creation, destruction, and power. And she's the feminine form of time. Another time reference here. And you can see she has the blue skin. And if you remember, we go back to August 10th, 2015. They put the projection of Kali on the Empire State Building. And most of the world would have written this as 10/8. And the reason they did it on August 10th, or 10/8, it goes back to sacred geometry. The interior of a pentagram is a pentagon, and it has an interior angle of 108 degrees. So that's why they did it on August 10th, or as most of the world would have seen it as 10/8. And of course there are 50 stars or 50 pentagrams on the United States flag. And if we want to encode the golden ratio or get the closest approximation of phi with our 50 stars here, our divisor would be 31, which goes back to our gematria of L, or deity. So our closest approximation of phi that we can get to with the with the number 50 is 31 to encode our golden ratio. It's just showing again how important this 31 is in the 31st pentagram. And of course, if we look at the states, the 31st state is California, named after the goddess Kali. The golden state, California, because it encodes our golden ratio with the states. And also located in California is the Golden Gate Bridge, and this is encoded to Venus as well. Construction began on the Golden Gate Bridge on January 5th, 1933. Construction ended on 4/19/1937. And that was 4 years, 104 days, back to our 414 for our visual magnitude of Venus. are 4 years, 104 days. And remember, Venus is 81 in Gematria, and the 81st prime is 419. So that's why the construction ended on 419. Just another reference to Venus. And remember, a few videos ago I showed you guys that the Dayton, Ohio shooting was at the address of 419. You just had the 419 East 5th Street, 419, 81st prime East, sun rises in the East, 5th Street, the 5th element is the ether, or wood. And Dayton, Ohio was the location. And what makes that significant is that Ohio, their flag, has the Great Conjunction Trigon on their flag. And if we go back here and look at this start point of 3/25/2017, and we go to 12/21/2020, that's 1,367 days after the 31st pentagram. And 1367 is our 219th prime. Back to our Revelation 13:8, our 219th verse. So just a big circular ritual to Revelation and Venus. Here's another encoding of Venus here. If we look at the band Red Hot Chili Peppers, they released their album Californication on 6/8/1999. And we had the Venus Sun transit on 6/8/2004. And that was 261 weeks after the release of the album. So they're encoding the Rose Cross, the 261 Hertz Rose Cross that I talked about in part 1. And if you look at their album cover here, they have the fire and the water. They have Venus and water here. The fire and the water are two alchemical elements that make up the star. And if we look at Revelation itself, if we split the 404 verses of Revelation into the closest approximation of the golden ratio as we can here, there are 404 verses in Revelation. So our closest approximation that we get here would be 250 divided by 154. That's our closest approximation of the golden ratio that we can get. And what makes that so significant is the 154th verse of Revelation is 9/11. This would be your golden verse of Revelation. And this also encodes the 24th star number that I've talked about many times before. From Revelation 6:12, the great earthquake, we move 33 verses to Revelation 8:11, and then 13 more to Revelation 9:11, and this 33:13, the wormwood star, that's our 24th star number. And remember here, the sun, the volume of the sun, is given as 1.41 times 10 to the 18th cubic kilometers. And the mirror of that is 81141. So they're encoding the sun as well into the wormwood star. The wormwood star can represent many types of stars when they do these rituals. But if you look at this 3313, I have 9 ways here that you can encode the 3313. The 466th prime is 3313, and this color blue, which is 466 nanometers, that goes back to our blue skin of Kali. And then we have 477 minutes. This is 33.13% of a day. And here's an interesting one here, the 226, second prime 3, second prime 3, and sixth prime 13 for 3313. And 1993 seconds is 33 minutes and 13 seconds. And I don't know if you remember this date, but 226, 1993. That was the date of the first World Trade Center bombing, 226, 1993. So they double encoded this 24 star number into that bombing ritual at the World Trade Center. And one more thing here to show you, I want to show you Captain Marvel here, and how she represents Venus, and how her encoding here is pulled directly from Revelation. So we have Revelation 13:8, the 219th verse of Revelation. And this movie is set in 1995. Captain Marvel is set in the year 1995. So from the founding year, we add our 219, and that gets us 1995. And then if we combine 1995 and 2019, it sums to 4014. Back to our 414 for our visual magnitude of Venus. And of course here she's wearing a star. It's an 8-pointed star, but still we have our star symbolism for Venus and our female Captain Marvel here. I think I'm going to wrap that up for part 2. I've got a lot more to show, so I'm going to do a part 3. But in part 3, I'm going to show you more Venus and golden ratio coding here, especially with the movie franchise James Bond. It's all about golden ratio and Venus. But just wanted to continue on here and show you all the golden ratio encoding, 9/11 encoding, Venus coding with Revelation. Okay guys, thanks for watching.